When my neighbor Sandra showed up at my door in a fake utility company uniform, I knew immediately she wasn't really an inspector. After 30 years as a detective, you develop an instinct. But instead of confronting her, I played along. "Oh my, an electrical inspection? How thorough?" I said, acting like a confused elderly woman. I let her inspect my house while I nervously followed her around. What Sandra saw was a frightened old lady with expensive jewelry left carelessly on the dresser. What Sandra didn't see was the 6 hidden cameras recording her every move, the fake jewelry worth $5, and the police detective sitting in an unmarked car outside, waiting for her to come back at night. She did. And that's when 30 years of experience paid off in the most satisfying way. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 68 years old. And this is the story of how I caught the thief who had been terrorizing our quiet neighborhood for 3 months. It started on a Tuesday morning in early October. I was in my kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang at exactly 9:15 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her mid-40s wearing a blue utility company vest with an official-looking badge clipped to her pocket. She carried a clipboard and wore a professional smile. I recognized her immediately. Sandra Mitchell. My neighbor from 3 houses down. The woman who had moved into Mrs. Henderson's old house 6 months ago. The woman who always seemed too interested in everyone's business. The woman who volunteered to help elderly neighbors with home safety checks and utility concerns. I opened the door with a smile. "Good morning, Sandra." Her professional expression faltered for just a fraction of a second. She hadn't expected me to recognize her under the fake uniform and clipboard. But she recovered quickly. "Oh, Mrs. Carter. I didn't realize this was your house on my route today. I'm working part-time for Metro Electric now. We're doing neighborhood safety inspections. May I come in and check your electrical panel? It'll only take 10 minutes." Everything about her story was wrong. The badge was too shiny, too new. The clipboard had no official forms, just blank paper. The utility vest had no company logo, no employee ID number. And Metro Electric doesn't do door-to-door inspections without prior notification. But here's what Sandra didn't know about me. I spent 30 years with the City Police Department. 25 of those years in the fraud and robbery division. I'd seen every con, every scam, every trick that thieves use to gain entry to homes. And I'd become very, very good at spotting them. More importantly, I'd been watching Sandra for 3 weeks. Ever since the robberies started. Let me back up and explain. 2 months ago, my neighbor Mr. Peterson was robbed. Someone had knocked on his door claiming to be from the gas company, inspected his basement, and left. 3 days later, his coin collection, worth $12,000, disappeared from his bedroom safe. The lock hadn't been forced. Someone knew exactly where it was and how to open it. 4 weeks ago, Mrs. Chang down the street was robbed. Same pattern. A water inspector had visited, looked around, asked questions. Within a week, her grandmother's jewelry was gone. $8,000 worth. 3 weeks ago, the Johnsons were hit. Cable repairman. Lost their electronics and some cash. $5,000. The police investigated but found no leads. The victims all described different people, different heights, different hair colors, different genders. But the pattern was always the same: utility worker pretense, elderly homeowner, valuables stolen within a week. After the 3rd robbery, I started paying attention. Real attention. Detective attention. I noticed Sandra walking past each victim's house multiple times in the days before the robberies. I noticed her chatting with Mr. Peterson about his hobby collecting old coins. I noticed her asking Mrs. Chang about that beautiful necklace. Is it a family heirloom? I noticed her commenting on the Johnsons' impressive entertainment system. Sandra was gathering information. She was the scout. And probably the thief. But I had no proof. Just 30 years of instinct and observation. So I waited. I watched. And I prepared. When Sandra rang my doorbell that Tuesday morning, I knew my turn had come. "Of course you can inspect the electrical panel," I said, opening the door wider. "Please come in." I've been so worried about electrical fires. At my age, we worry about everything. I played the role perfectly. Nervous elderly woman. A bit scattered. A bit too trusting. Exactly the type Sandra preyed on. Oh, you're so kind to check these things, I continued, wringing my hands. I live alone, you see. My husband passed away 5 years ago. I get so anxious about home maintenance. I never know if things are safe. Sandra's eyes lit up. Perfect victim. Alone. Anxious. Vulnerable. Don't worry, Mrs. Carter. That's why we do these inspections. Now, where is your electrical panel? It's in the basement. Let me show you. Oh, but the stairs are a bit steep. I'm always afraid I'll fall. Could you go down yourself? I'll wait up here. Of course. You stay right here. While Sandra went to the basement, where there was absolutely nothing wrong with my electrical panel, I stood at the top of the stairs and kept talking. Rambling. The way anxious elderly people do. I'm so glad someone's checking these things. Last week I was telling my friend Judith about how nervous I get living alone with all my valuables. My husband collected so many expensive things over the years. Sometimes I think I should sell them, but they have such sentimental value. There's his watch collection in the bedroom, the silver set in the dining room, and oh, I just got my mother's jewelry appraised last month, $25,000. Can you imagine? I keep it right on my dresser. I know I should get a safe, but at my age, I can barely remember my own phone number, let alone a safe combination. I was laying it on thick. Painting a picture of an easy target with clear, specific valuables in accessible locations. Sandra came back up the stairs with a smile. Everything looks fine down there, Mrs. Carter. But let me just check the outlets in your other rooms to make sure they're all properly grounded. Oh, would you? That's so thorough. I followed her through the house, continuing my nervous chatter, pointing out problem areas that didn't exist. And while I talked, Sandra's eyes were everywhere. Scanning. Cataloging. Planning. She spent extra time in the bedroom. This is a lovely room. Oh, is that jewelry on the dresser? It's beautiful. Yes, my mother's pieces. I really should put them away properly, but I like to look at them. They remind me of her. The jewelry on the dresser was costume pieces I'd bought at a thrift store for $5 total. But they looked real. Gold-colored chains. Fake diamonds that sparkled in the light. Glass pearls that looked convincingly genuine. Sandra's inspection took 20 minutes. When she left, she gave me a warm smile and said, "Everything looks safe, Mrs. Carter. You have a wonderful day." Thank you so much, dear. You're so kind to help an old woman. The moment she left, I got to work. First, I called Detective Marcus Webb, my former partner from the robbery division. He'd been a rookie when I retired 3 years ago, but I'd trained him well. "Marcus, it's Evelyn. I need a favor. Remember those neighborhood robberies? I think I have your thief. Can you spare an officer for surveillance tonight?" "Evelyn, if you say you have the thief, you have the thief. What do you need?" "Unmarked car outside my house. Starting at 10 p.m. I'm betting she'll hit between midnight and 3 a.m. She'll come in through the back door. I'm leaving it unlocked." "You're using yourself as bait." "Marcus, I've set up more than 100 sting operations in my career. Trust me. This one's going to work." Next, I activated my security system. Not the simple alarm system Sandra might have noticed. The real system. 6 hidden cameras I'd installed myself over the years. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, both entries, and the basement. All recording to a cloud server with timestamps. All with night vision capability. Then I prepared the bait. I left the fake jewelry prominently displayed on the bedroom dresser. I left my purse on the kitchen counter with $50 in cash visible. I left their expensive watch collection, actually cheap replicas, in an unlocked box on the nightstand. Everything looked carelessly accessible. Everything was calculated to be irresistible. At 9:30 p.m., I turned off most of the lights and went to my actual bedroom, the guest room where I'd been sleeping for the past 3 weeks while setting up this operation. I locked the door, set my phone to silent, and waited. Marcus texted at 10:15 p.m. In position. Stay safe, boss. I smiled. He still called me boss even though I'd been retired for 3 years. The waiting was the hardest part. It always had been. You set the trap, you prepare everything perfectly, and then you sit in the dark and wait for the criminal to make their move. At 1:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. The security app. Motion detected at the back door. I opened the live camera feed. There was Sandra, dressed entirely in black, using lockpicks on my back door. She was good, had the door open in under 2 minutes. She slipped inside, quiet as a shadow. I watched on my phone as she moved through my house with practiced efficiency. Straight to the bedroom. She picked up the fake jewelry, examined it briefly with a small flashlight, and slipped it into a black bag. Then the watches. Then the purse from the kitchen. She was in and out in 8 minutes. Professional. Confident. She'd clearly done this many times before. The moment she stepped out my back door, I texted Marcus. She's out. Moving to her car. Black bag with the items. Marcus's team moved fast. By the time Sandra reached her car, parked 2 blocks away like any careful thief, 4 unmarked police cars surrounded her. I got dressed and walked down the street just in time to see Sandra's face when she realized what was happening. The shock. The fear. The desperate attempt to drop the bag and claim she was just taking a walk. Detective Webb held up his phone, showing the video footage from my cameras. We have you on video, Ms. Mitchell. Breaking and entering, theft, and based on the items you're carrying, we'll be connecting you to at least 6 other robberies in this neighborhood. Sandra saw me standing behind the police cars. Her expression changed from fear to pure rage. You, she hissed. You set me up. You're just a lonely old woman. You don't have the right. Actually, I interrupted calmly, I'm a retired police detective with 30 years in the fraud and robbery division. And you're under arrest. Marcus couldn't hide his smile as he read Sandra her rights. They searched Sandra's house that night with a warrant. What they found was a treasure trove of evidence. Stolen jewelry from 8 different houses. Detailed notes on neighborhood residents, their schedules, their valuable possessions, their vulnerabilities. Multiple disguises. Fake utility company IDs. Lockpicking tools. And a laptop with photos of the inside of victims' homes, clearly taken during her inspection visits. The total value of stolen items, $73,000. The neighborhood robberies that had terrorized elderly residents for 3 months were solved in a single night. Sandra Mitchell was charged with 8 counts of burglary, theft, fraud, and criminal impersonation. Her bail was set at $100,000. She couldn't pay it. 2 weeks later, I was sitting on my front porch with my coffee when Mr. Peterson walked over. Mrs. Carter, I just wanted to thank you. The police recovered my coin collection. Every single coin. They said you're the one who caught her. I just helped the investigation along, I said modestly. You did more than that. We all felt like victims. Like we'd been foolish for trusting a stranger in uniform. You showed us that we weren't foolish. She was just very, very good at her crime. Until she met someone better. Over the next few days, more neighbors came by. Mrs. Chang got her grandmother's jewelry back. The Johnsons got their electronics. Everyone got their property returned because I'd caught Sandra before she could sell everything. The local newspaper ran a story. Retired detective catches neighborhood thief. They wanted to interview me. I declined. I'd spent 30 years keeping a low profile. I wasn't about to start seeking attention now. But Marcus came by one evening with a bottle of wine and a smile. You know what the captain said when we closed all 8 cases in one night? He said, "Get Evelyn Carter out of retirement. She's better than our whole unit." I laughed. I'm 68 years old, Marcus. My detective days are over. Really? Because it looked to me like you just ran a textbook sting operation. Setup, surveillance, controlled arrest, full evidence recovery. You didn't miss a single step. Maybe, I admitted. But I'm happy being retired. I just couldn't let that woman keep terrorizing my neighbors. Elderly people deserve to feel safe in their own homes. We deserve to trust people who come to our doors in uniforms. She was destroying that trust. Marcus nodded. Well, thanks to you, she's going to prison for a long time. The district attorney is pushing for 10 years minimum. After he left, I sat on my porch as the sun set, thinking about everything that had happened. Sandra had made a classic mistake. She'd assumed that elderly people were easy targets. Weak. Confused. Unable to fight back. She'd looked at me and seen a vulnerable old woman living alone. She hadn't seen the 30 years of experience. The sharp mind that had solved hundreds of cases. The detective instincts that never really retire. She'd underestimated me completely. And that underestimation cost her everything. 3 months later, Sandra's case went to trial. I testified. The video evidence was damning. The stolen property was overwhelming. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she'd had a difficult childhood, that she needed help, not punishment. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Ms. Mitchell, you targeted elderly victims specifically because you believed they were vulnerable and easy to exploit. You violated their homes and their trust. This court sentences you to 12 years in state prison. 12 years. She'd be 67 when she got out. Almost my age. Maybe by then, she'd understand that age doesn't equal weakness. That experience doesn't disappear with grey hair. That the little old lady you're trying to rob might just be a retired detective waiting to catch you. As I walked out of the courthouse that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in the 3 years since I'd retired. The deep satisfaction of putting a criminal behind bars. Of protecting innocent people. Of using everything I'd learned over 30 years to make my community safer. I was retired from the police department. But I'd never stopped being a detective. It's not something you can turn off. It's who you are. And that Tuesday morning when Sandra knocked on my door in her fake uniform, she didn't just knock on any elderly woman's door. She knocked on a detective's door. Big mistake. The biggest mistake of her criminal career. And absolutely the most satisfying case of my entire life.